Guitar legend, jazz icon, world's biggest Kenny G enthusiast.
Kenny G. There's nothing more stupid than that.
His debut album, of course, features Jaco Pastorius, someone who I actually heard of long before I heard of Pat Metheny because he influenced pretty much every bassist who ever lived.
Besides being borderline lunatic,
What do you mean
his
borderline?
boastfulness was... Okay, that's true. He was insane. Absolute incredible bass player with insane skill.
Unsurprisingly, much of the fusion and the signature Pat Metheny style that we're used to is not present on this one, considering it was his debut album. However, it's truly a marvel that this trio was able to create such interesting compositions with such a meat and potatoes approach of just bass, guitar, and drums. Of course, star power plays a factor in there with Pat and Jaco, but drummer Bob Moses was also outstanding on this record. He more than holds his own, acting as a perfect backdrop at times and other times being front and center. And what makes this even more impressive is Pat was just 21. He was my age when he put together this album, which kind of, you know, brings up ideas of when my parents were 24-year-old memes.
Also with Pat Metheny, nothing cracks me up more than his absolute pure hatred for... Kenny G.
No, so there's that video. Most people haven't seen the article that he wrote about it. I think the question was maybe like, you know, 3 words long.
Yeah.
And the response was like, didn't fit on the page. It's like 18 pages. I also want to address the stupid motherfuckers from our side-eye review that somehow misinterpreted what I said as the Lyle Mays rose from the dead and went to play with him in the city. The guitar synthesizer was a big part of Pat Metheny group, of which Lyle Mays was a central part of, right? Okay, cool. The guitar synthesizer has the word synthesizer in it, right? Awesome, cool. So shut the fuck up forever. Without further bovine excrement, Bright Size Life. Pat wastes no time going full steam ahead into the main riff, introducing a kind of aggressiveness despite the lighter tone. It's evident on the whole album, but especially here, the production, I thought, was top tier. Even the idea to pan Pat and Jaco to either side of the stereo really lets you hear all the detail that they put into their music, and Bob Moses adds much detail as well with his beautiful cymbal work, channeling the intense focus on the velocity, weaving in ghost notes. The highlight has to be Jaco's solo. Perfect tone and melody driven by the legendary bass of doom. It incorporates so many different styles you don't hear from really any other bassist. This man could do pinch harmonics on bass, and he blends seamlessly back into the main melody to close it out. Yet another Pat Metheny classic. I give this one a 9. Much of the same as the opener on this one, but as one reviewer put it really well, it does the same things stylistically, but tells it from a different emotional perspective. The first track was a great team effort to really introduce the record. For this one, I think Bob really steps into the background to let Pat and Jaco do their thing really nicely.
This one has more of a memorable intro with a moody yet relaxing feel. Metheny comes in strong with some of his most relaxing, almost magical chords I could possibly think of in my entire life.
Well, Jaco's solo I thought was excellent. What stood out to me the most from his performance was his really low grumbling parts right underneath Pat's verses that really make the earth shake in the most relaxing way possible. Pat delivers excellent tone with his 12-string overdubs. While he sticks to the formula that works, when you have a formula that works as well as Pat Metheny's, it's acceptable. I could actually listen to the same Pat Metheny song for 72 hours straight, which I probably have done with Spring Ain't Here. I give this one a 7.
I give this one a 7 as well.
They go even further, pushing Bob into the background. Excellent duet between Jaco and Pat. Hearing two of the most legendary musicians ever going back and forth by themselves is really a treat. Jaco's use of chords does wonders and at times gets so detailed that it almost sounds like you're hearing a piano. Pat, as usual, is inhumanly smooth, delivering the melody which seems to just constantly reinvent itself throughout the entire song. This was definitely designed for Pat to stand out, but again, for me, Jaco really grabbed my attention the most. His playing style is so grand and innovative that he's able to sound like 3 different instruments at once. I give this one an 8. We finally throw that nice relaxing tone way the fuck out the window with Bob's grand return. This is the track that I think is closest in touch with that kind of old school, you know, bebop jazz, as Bob goes crazy on the ride cymbal and the freer connection between Pat and Jaco. That being said, there isn't really a whole lot of directional changes from them, which allows Bob Moses to more than deliver. Stylistically, I prefer Pat's personal style to this kind of traditional jazz, but they certainly pull it off with ease.
This was my least favorite song.
Good, this is my least favorite too.
Jaco plays his best, but it somewhat clashes a little bit with Pat's playing, which is really weird to see because the songs before they were able to do it so well.
You know why that happens though, right? This is freeform jazz.
It's not freeform jazz, okay? It's actually... Bob keeps perfect tempo, but the lack of variety also seems to make the song sound even a little more sloppier. Of course, the skill, technicality, and talent are undeniable in what they're playing, but as a song on the album, it seems more of a warm-up session rather than an actual song. 5.5.
Give it a 6. Great job of bringing this song all the way up from ground zero so meticulously. Pat's opening high notes create a really dreamy atmosphere perfect for the title, which Bob and Jaco steadily accelerate to bring us back to earth.
Absolutely majestic start. Things become more interesting with Jaco and Bob jumping in, their light accents backing up and adding the perfect addition.
For the first time, Jaco really takes center stage here for the more mellow solo, if you can even call it that. While his other solos feature strong backings from Pat, the production style, which even lets him take up both stereo channels on this one, really lets him get the full spotlight, along with the tone shift he displays as well. The song also sounds like it should be called Midwestern Night's Dream, so A+ for the title. I give it an 8.
Perfectly captures the title. 7.5.
Jaco's high notes almost sound like horns, and he does a great job blurring the lines between the higher and lower octaves that he plays in succession. The rhythm on the opening riff is undeniable as well, really bouncy, really energetic. The trio sound is so tight here, especially evident on the big crescendos of Bob's cymbal crashes. I give this one a 7.5. Other than the Bright Side's Life, probably the closest we get to Pat's style that we're used to. Probably the most upbeat on the record too. There are moments that sound kind of almost tropical and beachy. Sounds like something from Letter from Home. Pat also has some of his most interesting work on the album here, especially highlighted during that descending arpeggio section. Jaco and Bob add great foundation as well, and a brilliant, true closer to this album. And my second favorite on here. Give it an 8.5. It's actually 2 different Ornette Coleman songs, and Ornette Coleman, of course, one of the founders of, you guessed it, freeform jazz. They all do an excellent job of capturing the structure and foundation of the original, but also adding in that Pat Metheny flavor that we love. Not just tonally, but also with some of his most impressive playing on the record. And it really goes for all 3 of them here, especially highlighted by the rhythm section's dual solo. That was fantastic. I give this one a freeform jazz.
I'd have to agree.
Overall, while Pat has gone on to do more impressive work, this was really a landmark, not just for his career, but the direction of this kind of jazz, a style that's far and away my favorite. Of course, listening to Pat also led me to discover guys like Wes Montgomery and Miles Davis, both of which are brilliant, but to me, Pat's forms of jazz just speak to me way more.
For a debut album, definitely a very strong one for the skill, technicality, arrangements, production-wise, but definitely having this star lineup, which maybe at the time wasn't considered a star lineup. Certain structures on the songs might have been a little wonky, but it's all part of the freeform jazz. Do I have to do the post for it? Yeah. I'd have to agree with you from the jazz I have heard, which it isn't a lot. Pat's definitely speaks to me the most in terms of what he delivers.
Also making this all the more special is the appearance of Jaco long before he was the sensation that we know him as today. And very rarely do dream teams have such chemistry as Jaco and the pattern, of course, Bob. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see more of it. Give this one an 8.
Give this one a 7.